Woman Who Chat is sponsored by Grow Radio. Grow Radio is an online radio station dedicated to bringing you a different podcast on the hour every hour. I'm proud that Woman Who Chat is played on Grow Radio every Tuesday at 3 p.m. and Friday at 8 a.m. and to be part of their podcasting community. If you want to listen to the station, explore their shows, get your podcast onto Grow Radio, and check out many of the blogs to improve your podcasting skills. So head over to growradio.uk today. Welcome to Woman Who Chat, and today I'm chatting to Abbi Hoxleigh of Little PR Rock Marketing Limited. Newly limited, I love that.
Yes, very newly limited.
So Abbi, tell us what you do.
Okay, so in short, if you've ever Googled yourself, it's very fascinating to see what happens. And what you will find and search online is your digital footprint. So for me, as a public relations or PR person, that's very interesting to me because that's the way that people Google you, they do their due diligence on you, and not just online, but also in print and everything else as well. So I don't know whether you know, but ChatGPT and Google Bard are learning all the time. They're searching on the internet for all this information. And what I tend to try to do is help people to become those digital trailblazers so that they can basically get information on there so that when people are searching and, you know, sort of chatting away on whether it's Google or, you know, something like ChatGPT and typing in, they'll find you, they'll find your brand, and they'll find it in a way that is really helpful for you to position yourself.
So we're going to chat all about PR, marketing and communications and everything that you do. And, you know, you've just published Credibility Confidence, How to Leverage PR as a Startup. That's available on Amazon, and we'll put the link to that in the show notes. But you've come on a journey yourself. I mean, you've grown yourself. You've obviously worked with me, with Woman Who. You've really elevated your personal brand, and you've actually transitioned through a number of businesses during COVID to arrive to where you are now. But that hasn't mattered, has it? Because Abbi has become the brand, hasn't it?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I think all of us, and I do talk about it in the book as well, about the CEO brand and how important that is, especially through public relations, because if you have established that brand, because we all need to take risks, one of the, you know, the things that we have to do as entrepreneurs and business owners is take risks, and they are more forgiving when those risks, you know, go awry, because people like you. It's the know, like, and trust, isn't it? And all of those things. But I think for me, particularly with public relations, it's important because in our marketing, we talk about our customers, but actually with PR and public relations, we're talking about anybody who's invested in our business. So it could be an investor, an employee, a supplier, communities, trade associations, governments. It could be anybody that's out there actively looking for you. And then these are the people doing their due diligence, their searching and everything. And that's one of the reasons I focus on online, particularly, is helping smaller businesses understand the process of actually creating that digital footprint. And I think that's more of what I do today, is social purpose, environment, and actually working with people to get themselves seen in those places where, you know, that content contribution is seen, particularly on higher domain authority websites and stuff. Yeah.
And it's interesting. I mean, I was always told never to Google my own name because you only see certain things, and get somebody else to Google it and show you what they see. But actually, it's interesting because the bits of PR I've had over the years are the things that come up the highest, as well as my LinkedIn and all those other things. But people are incredibly nosy. They are nosy about people, and they don't like to work with people. You know, I say this over and over again. If you want to work with a company, the first thing I do is go to their website, look at the About Us page, and then I Google their name. Yeah. And I find all I can about them, because it is this know, like, and trust thing. So if your digital footprint isn't there, which I found recently, I went to interview somebody and I Googled their name and what they did, and literally 4 or 5 things came up, and 2 of those things weren't about them. And I thought, where is your digital footprint? There is nothing.
And it's really interesting because as a public relations person, we do a lot of social listening. I was working on I've joined a think tank of investigative journalists and researchers and stuff, and we have a lot of little topics, you know, every day. And I was looking and doing some social, what we call social listening the other day. So we were checking on, social media and also online, and where all these stories were coming from, whether they are the big, media, or whether they are something like TikTok, and what are people saying about that brand all over. And I think it's really important because people increasingly are doing that. And what bothers me going forward, which is why I feel it's really important for me to contribute, is that actually people are now obviously using generative AI to just go, recommend a such and such. And you're like, oh, so they're actually not bothering to Google. They're just literally searching in something like that. So if there's no content for these, things to find, and you need to, and actually, it's increasingly happening that people are actually turning to that way of looking for things, which is really interesting. But Googling yourself is fun to do. Obviously, I changed my name from Abbi Head to Hoxleigh. So I typed it in, and obviously all the things come up. And actually, now when I think, oh, I've got this idea for a pitch, where is it best placed? Is it best placed on my website, which has got a less footfall, or should I pitch it to a media outlet, and then it's got a higher domain and it all comes up on your first page of Google? And I think I would choose that one until I'm established in the other area.
Fantastic. Well, it's interesting something you said there, Abbi, about, AI, and I use ChatGPT. I think a lot of people do now to just get ideas. I don't literally use it and copy it, but I find, and I actually put my own name in, and I said, tell me about Sandra Garlick. And it came back with a fantastic bio. It accredited me for writing a book I've never even heard of. And when I Googled the book, it didn't exist. And I thought, what a great title for a book I'm about to write.
Yeah, it does have glitches. I don't know if everybody knows this, but something, there's Google Bard as well, but they are in their embryonic stages, even though, I mean, it's only November, but actually they do spit out some gobbledygook sometimes. And that's why somebody like myself, who's a communications person, I can actually take that information. It's great for research and stuff like that, but actually there's always going to be a need. I think a lot of people in my role are worried that they're going to be taken over because of copywriting, but actually it just frees us up. So a press release, maybe searching or whatever, I don't do my press releases on, but imagine people did, and the client is doing more of their own stuff, and then I get that limited less time, which enables me to do the fact finding, research, strategy, and that's the less, so that's the bit that the human person can do that the AI can't, because they've called the content like vanilla or whatever, but actually finding those hooks and all of that sort of stuff is really important. And for startups, definitely when they're looking to get involved in this media circus and stuff, I think the practicing and what I call stacking, it's in the book about the stacking strategy. You can find these places where you can pocket and trial, and you can be interviewed by a magazine that's not, quite as established, and you can just try it and build up slowly. And I think it may not make me as popular as people, might think in PR. And I don't think it's about necessarily launching into the big press. It's about being at the right time, the right stage. And that's what I said about stacking. That's what's worked for me anyway. So
when I talk to people about visibility, I say, it's about being the name that the forefront of somebody's mind, the name that people think about first. But you want that to be in a positive way. So, as you're building up your brand, as you're building up this, as you say, stacking, it's about having those key elements that demonstrate your expertise. Because if you're going to feature, if the local radio station have got something that's hit the news and it's something big, they're looking for local people that can talk about that right away. And if you're very, as you say, very grey, very sort of not quite aligned with your message, and you're not putting stuff out there in the right way, you're never going to be found, are you?
No, and I think as well, it's about having the confidence to appear on those media, because you are going to get questions that you perhaps aren't expecting. And that's just standard. And so for me, that's why I call the book Credibility Confidence. You can have all the qualifications in the world. I have lots of qualifications. But if you haven't got the confidence in yourself and your ability to handle the difficulties, handle the questions, handle the without sort of freezing and stuff. And I did all that. I was on a TV streaming thing, and the screen went off and I froze and all sorts of stuff. But I think if you do it slowly, if you just launch yourself onto the BBC and you have this thing, what you want to do is to be the person they go back to again and again. And I think that's why I encourage people to go through that, you know, triangle, which I call the source trust triangle, to have that integrity, to have those benefits, to show them that you've got qualifications and all the experience. And then you begin to build the trust with them, and then you become that source that they go back to. And I think that's the important thing. And these days, I'm finding increasingly that journalists need credible people that can give them the answers they need, because the more you help them, the more you do it for them, the more they don't have to, you know, constantly, I mean, they're absolutely crazy busy. And I know that from the stories that I've been involved with journalists, and it's a hell, the newsroom, it's like so intense when a story is breaking. And I talked about on The Woman Who Inspires, and you know, and I had a story, and it was snowballing all over social media within when you hit on that story. And I think it's about choosing the right media outlets for you. So for businesses, I know particularly local papers, you know, they'll do awards, they'll do sort of charitable stuff and all of that sort of thing, and any kind of, you know, sort of relative supported business stuff. But there are actually dedicated business related places where people, you know, they can, and some are paid, you know, I don't have a problem with, you know, some payment towards, you know, contributions. I don't think Google, you know, websites function on nothing. So I think it's about sharing the right content in the right place at the right time to the right people. And as I said, your stakeholders are different to your customers. And I have had clients and people who've come to me and they have shared in the big papers or whatever, and they have received no feedback or whatever. And it might be because the story was about what the journalist wanted to write about and not what was good for them, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's, I think all journalists, radio producers, TV producers, they build up a little black book. They build up a book. So you say, oh God, she's on the radio again. She's on the radio again, or she's on the TV. And it was very much for me personally, when I was an employment law solicitor, I could talk from one perspective, from an employer perspective, about employment law. So anytime there was a new breaking piece of employment legislation, they used to phone me up and say, would you come and comment on this? And I used to find I was pitted against somebody who had the opposing view.
Yes.
And I'm very fortunate that I had media training both as a lawyer and when I was doing volunteer work with the FSB, Federation of Small Businesses, because had I not had that media training and not been experienced at having those questions literally thrown back in your face, well, is this not the case, you know, that such and such, and you think, and it can floor you.
And it can affect whether you're asked again, because, you know, sometimes people come on with different things. But no, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons that I mean, sometimes I feel like a sort of like a little bit of an agent with my clients. I was working with this young, very young person of 4 years old, obviously written those books. And I actually took him and his mum to a radio station because they'd never seen one before. They'd never been in one. And it's actually, you know, progressively, if you go slow and sure, you know, do a bit, learn a bit, I think you are better equipped afterwards and it won't scare you off. And I think it's about picking your battles as well and what stories you want to tell. And certainly for me, I will openly admit I am a PR person. I'm a PR probably expert, probably know a bit more than other people, obviously, because I've done it for 10 years at the charity as well. But actually, what is my industry specialism? And that's what excites me. So when I work with somebody, I want to know, what is that specialism that you've got? And for me, mine's communications. And the reason it's that is because I can do easy read documents, which I used to do at the charity. So I can do that sort of communications, obviously what they, or alternatively, I can do academic papers. So for me to take the academic stuff and make it accessible and digestible, oh my goodness, that's my specialism. Not all PR people have that range of communication. So I can dissect titles, I can read between the lines, I can, look at the semantics of it. What does that actually mean? What does that actually say? And so working with a poet at the moment, is absolute, joy, because she's obviously into language and spoken word and stuff. And so that's what excites me. And I would say, yes, I am an expert in that. So if people wanted to talk about any kind of communications, that would be obviously having a graphics background. I've got, I can talk about how we see things, why we see things the way we do, but also, how we understand, the way that we are communicating with each other, which I love.
Absolutely. I can tell you love that, because you elevated your passion shone through there.
Yeah.
And, you've written this book for startups. So,
Yes.
As a startup, you sort of I see it as you try and be everything. You try and do everything yourself. You've not got the budget. You can't go out there and do everything, which is why the book is great, because
Yes.
obviously people can tap into that at a very early stage in business. But, when you're trying to do everything yourself, you think, well, do I do this first? Do I do that first? Will PR help me? Will communications help me? How am I communicating the right message to my client base or my potential client base? What is a good strategy for a startup, to actually get their digital footprint out there?
I think the most important thing is to find out what kind of outlets are available to you in your area, and also building those relationships with those outlets. So as I said, it's great to go to the local papers and stuff as well, because you'll find out what they think is newsworthy. There is elements in the book that tells you about what kind of things they're looking for, whether it's the timeliness of a story, or sometimes obviously there are the whole sort of celebrity PR aspect of PR, which is something that is a totally different thing to me. I'm looking for thought leaders and people who want to be these industry specialists. So, but certainly they're looking for content which is sometimes my favorite one is future impact and stuff. So if what I would say to somebody who is looking at being newsworthy either in the press or in business media is to basically have a stream of consciousness, all the things that you can think of that you, like you were saying, I'm passionate about communications, write it all down, just write it all down, stick down the side, just read this, and actually go, right, that's interesting, I'd like to know more about that. Oh, I didn't know I thought about that. And actually have some sort of, and then that'll help you have a strategy so that then you can sort of drip feed it, rather than what worries me sometimes when I see clients come to me, they've shared chapter and verse and then there's nowhere to go after that. And that's the thing that bothers me, because if they'd have thought about the elements of, maybe over a year, maybe over over my strategy for the next 5 years, I don't know, but like, this is the elements that I will let go of at these different times. And obviously, we do have events, we have, and certainly I would say to people, sure, if you're starting out, get those values in and show them. So if you believe in something, then do something passionate about it. I mean, I work with people that have worked with charities and stuff like that, and stand for something. I'd say get that thing in, that you've got that, they recognize you because you stand for this and this is what your values are. Yeah.
Yeah. And you've got those people that go to extremes, and we come back to those individuals that they're always in the news. They're people that have made themselves into what you call celebrities because of their controversial views. And sometimes you can have strong views without being controversial and putting yourself on that parapet, but you are putting yourself on a parapet with PR, aren't you? So you have to be a bit
very much so. And it's about managing that visibility as well, because as you're becoming elevated and becoming more visible, there is a different attraction for people. You are attracting different types of people and stuff, and actually it is that repel and attract, isn't it? And it is very difficult. There has been people come to me and I don't believe that all publicity is good publicity. I don't think it is now. I think, I don't know, that's my personal opinion. But actually, I think if you're thoughtful about it, not manipulative, I would think everything that I've said has to be done in an ethical way. So you're not spinning the news. I think lots of PR people years ago would spin the news and try and make, but actually if you're considerate and ethical and deciding, what to say, rather than just saying something or doing something just to get the coverage. I think that's the danger, is that some of us feel we need to overshare to get that coverage or whatever. And I think that is, I'm finding that some people have had, it's bitten them, and then they come to me and I'm like, oh, okay. Oh dear. And then you have to sort it out. And I think it's just being thoughtful about what people are seeing, and not just your customers, and think, if you're going to scale, you will have others. You might have employees and investors and all sorts of stuff. So there was a friend of mine who she said, I don't want these questions that are asked in the media about my business. I don't want people to see that thing. I mean, I know it's a hook, and then it's always interesting to see the titles of the stories as well, isn't it? They're slightly converted. So yeah.
what we call the clickbait.
Yeah, that's the one.
And it is, and I think people have to be prepared that, when you're putting yourself out there, when I say to women that have shared their stories in, copies of I Am a Woman Who, never put anything in print that you don't want to see on the front page of a newspaper, because you are virtually exposing yourself. But so, you know, whatever you share, you have to be prepared for the consequences that hit behind that. And if you share something that one of your clients potentially would offend them, then you are putting that client relationship at risk, aren't you?
That's the thing. And this is the thing, you know, this is about taking the risks, and what are you visible for? I mean, as you know, and as a lot of people know, you know, my own backstory, I have PTSD, and I do talk about that. I do talk about some of the elements of that. And I was on a podcast the other day, and the first question was, you know, can you talk about the PTSD? I was like, oh, and I just did. I just said, it's like Fight Club. You know, sometimes with people with PTSD, don't talk about Fight Club. It's just one of those things. But it has affected the way I've done PR. It has. You know, all of the things we go through affected. You know, if it hadn't been for that, I would never have worked for charities. I probably would have, you know, gone, I don't know, down London and done some big thing or something big stressful PR, not well, graphics at the time, and I never would have had this skill set that I've got now. So it has actually affected it. But it's how do I elegantly share that? How do I share it so it doesn't trigger people? How do I, whether it's public speaking, obviously meeting yourself, you know, learning about public speaking and stuff, you know, how do I do that in a way? And for me, I just think, is that adding value to that person? And if it's not, it's just about me. There's no ego for me in writing a book. It was simply because some people want to understand PR. They've got a lot of time. They've just started up. They need to get that point, and they couldn't afford to work with a PR person, whether it was myself or somebody else, but they can, you know, read a book. I think it took me, you know, a few hours to read the book when I was, you know, editing it and stuff. And they can do that, and they can start there, and then they understand what it is, and it's not scary, and then they can do something else. And yeah, it's it can be a media circus. And when you start mixing with that level of high profile journalists and stuff, it can be heady. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you know, you said something really key there. You know, it's about who are you helping, what the purpose of putting the content out there. Because if you're putting something out there just to beef up your own brand and say, look at me, aren't I amazing? It's not going to really go down the same as if you're sharing a story of how you've helped transform somebody or done something that has benefited somebody else. Because
Yeah.
at the end of the day, that's the type of brand you want to build, isn't it? Because you want to, the whole purpose of PR is to get more clients.
I think that's the thing. And I think people can see through that sort of vanity press and all of those sorts of things. And also, you know, I think for me, that's not the kind of PR I work with. Obviously, I understand it a little bit more, you know, the celebrity PR of having a story and then burying that story with another story, and then so and so comes out and then such and such has published something else to balance them, and I'm like, you know, that for me is a whole other world of PR. And I did my assignment for my CRPR diploma because I just wanted to have the diploma on top of the, you know, the chartered membership and all of that. I just, you know, I kind of wanted to go into the nuts and bolts academically more. And I did my assignment on Meghan and Harry. And obviously you've got royal PR and you've got celebrity PR, and the clash has just,
Yeah.
it's just incredible. It's, you know, and I won't sort of go into it too much, but actually, you know, trying to follow that story. Oh, how anybody facts finds when it's coming from all directions. You know, it was before the Queen passed away, but actually it was extremely, you know, I was like, wow, this is intense. This is, you know, and it was, yeah, it was great as an assignment.
Well, we've run out of time, Abby. We could chat about this all day. What I'd love you to do is to leave our audience with a top tip or piece of advice, something they can take away.
I think my biggest piece of advice from what I found of my working with people over doing PR over the last 18 months or whatever, it's really, for me, understanding the difference between authenticity and vulnerability. So for me, vulnerability would be me sharing aspects of things I'm not comfortable with for the purposes of being vulnerable. Being authentic is about sharing those things that you are in control of, or, you know, like the fact I've mentioned I have PTSD, I can do that without being vulnerable because I'm no longer vulnerable about it. But if you're oversharing, if you're doing those things to get coverage, it's very difficult to claw that back because you will feel exposed or overexposed, and it's going to be really difficult to manage yourself as you become more visible. That's what I was going to say.
Fantastic. Well, today I've been chatting to Abbi Hoxleigh of Little PR Rock Marketing. It's been fantastic to chat to you, and we will put all the links and everything to your book in the show notes. Thank you, Abbi.
Thank you.